Good morning. Welcome to Residential Real Estate Today. I'm Charlie Bengel.
And I'm Eyerusalem Meaza. Grab a cup of coffee and let's make your real estate career better.
Happy Friday, Eyerusalem.
Happy Friday.
What's in the news today?
Okay. Well, 61% of Americans say now is a good time to buy. The share of renters who say now is a good time to purchase a home as its highest level in 5 years, according to the latest reading from Fannie Mae's Home Purchase Sentiment Index. Homeowners are also starting to feel more optimistic about selling. 4 of 6 components that the index measures increased in June over May, but the index, which measures American sentiment about the housing market, still remains down by 15 points over the last few months. In April, the index had reached a record low as the COVID-19 pandemic ignited in the US. A second month of improvement in June allowed the PSI to regain some of the sharp losses in optimism observed in March and April, says Doug Duncan, Fannie Mae's chief economist. The index suggests more favorable conditions for first-time home buyers, which is consistent with a recent rebound in home purchase activity and applications, Duncan adds. Next, a new study suggests racial barriers to homeownership may be evident as early as the mortgage lending search. Black homebuyers are being denied a mortgage at higher percentages than other homebuyers, a new analysis from LendingTree finds. Researchers looked at mortgage denial rates between Black Americans and the overall population in the nation's 50 largest metros. Researchers found out that, on average, Black home buyers are denied mortgages 12.64% of the time, 6.49 percentage points higher than the average overall denial rate of 6.15%. Even in areas such as counties with a majority of Black residents, the denial rate is disproportionately high for both Black homeowners and home buyers, the study notes. Mortgage refinance loans also saw higher denial rates for Black homeowners than other applicants. Black applicants applying for refinances were denied mortgage refinance loans on average 30.22% of the time, 13.5 percentage points higher than the average overall denial rate of 17.07%. And better news, as part of its Fair Housing Action Plan, the National Association of Realtors teamed up with the experts at the Perception Institute to create a free online workshop to help members avoid implicit bias in their daily business interactions. Implicit bias is the brain's automatic instant association of negative stereotypes with particular groups of people, often without our conscious awareness. These unconscious stereotypes embedded in our brains over time by history and culture can cause us to treat those who are different from us unfairly, even while our conscious minds reject discrimination. All agents go through pre-licensed training. We do continuing education, and we know the law. We come into this business to help people buy their dream homes. We all think we're being fair, says Pat Combs, an agent with Coldwell Banker AGS Schmidt Realty in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the past president of NAR. But an undercover investigation of real estate agents published in December 2019 by Newsday revealed sobering findings. The 3-year study uncovered evidence that brokers and agents allegedly subjected minorities to different treatment from whites in 40% of transactions, and in nearly half the transactions involving Black potential homebuyers. The good news is that recent studies have identified specific practices to interrupt and override the bias that can interfere with our objectivity. The new free online workshop from NAR and the Perception Institute helps members understand how our unconscious brains stereotype others without our knowing it. It offers practical tools to help with cross-group interactions, like creating protocols and scripts to ensure that you treat every potential client the same and don't have to worry about saying the wrong thing. The training offers other techniques to improve relationships with all different people agents encounter, to ensure they treat everyone as individuals, practice empathy, and appreciate the world from others' perspectives. With implicit bias training, real estate professionals can exemplify their values, improve relationships, grow their business, and halt discrimination in the home sales market, one interaction at a time. Should pre-approval letters be required for home tours? Well, many home sellers are trying to limit how many people walk through their properties due to the pandemic. As a result, more real estate professionals are suggesting sellers limit in-person tours to only buyers who can show they've been pre-approved for a mortgage. A pre-approval letter is a written offer from a lender that tentatively approves them for a mortgage and also shows how much they are allowed to borrow. Having a pre-approval letter has long been a preferred requirement by agents when submitting an offer, but when having a pre-approval letter before looking at homes given the COVID-19 environment is an absolute must. Kara Amir, a real estate professional with Coldwell Banker, Vanguard Realty in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, told Money. Sellers and listing agents are cautious about who is coming into their homes, and they want to ensure that only those that are truly qualified are coming through those doors. Many home sellers are asking for pre-approval letters, but some also may accept pre-qualification letters too. A pre-qualification letter is less involved process where a lender verbally asks for an overview of a buyer's finances instead of like a pre-approval where they review all supporting documentation like pay stubs, federal tax returns, W-2s, down payment funds, and more. As such, mortgage pre-approvals tend to carry more weight with home sellers than a pre-qualification. If real estate agents are going to present pre-approval letters to showings, they must then ask all the buyers to provide proof, says Brian Green, Director of Fair Housing Policy at the National Association of Realtors. We've seen situations where agents don't appear to apply that requirement consistently, he told Money. That could raise potential fair housing issues. Charlie, what's going on with rates?
So first, yes, I think that pre-approval letters should be required to show homes. I think it is insane that realtors are taking people through sellers' homes in the middle of a pandemic when those people may not be qualified to purchase. It boggles the mind, and we have such an opportunity right now to kind of reset this custom, and I hope that we take advantage of it. 30-year fixed, 3 1/8, 30-year jumbo. These are for DC rates, complements of P&C mortgage, and they are purchase rates. These are not refinance rates, but finally, below 3%. I don't think anybody thought that we would ever see it. 2.875, that is an insane rate. FHA and VA remain at 2 3/4. Again, amazing rates. Eyerusalem, talk to us about the market.
In the last week in Hampton Roads, we saw 794 new listings hit the market, 722 properties go pending, and 784 properties go sold. In the last week in the Washington metro area, within 30 miles of the White House, we saw 1,327 new listings hit the market, 1,636 go pending, and 670 homes sold. Back over to Charlie with our special guest.
So still a super brisk market, both in Northern Virginia, DC, and in the Hampton Roads market, where we are seeing more properties go under contract than get listed. So now remains a great time to sell. I would like to welcome special guest Coach Amy Lassen to the show. Amy, always good to see you. Happy Friday. What's going on today?
Well, you and I talked in advance about what is most pressing. And this is something that I ask on coaching calls to try to cut through the noise. I think we all in this business are guilty of saying, I have so much going on, I'm busy, I'm overwhelmed, and we could start with any topic. And the listener, the agent would say, oh, that's a good one, I need that one. But it's rarely the one that they need the most. And so you and I talked about what's most pressing, and it was lack of listings.
Yes.
And being able to help buyers actually get their offers accepted.
Right.
Two biggest points of pain. Yep. So those of you listening, next time you think, what should I do? Ask yourself, wait. What's my biggest point of pain? And start there. Ignore the noise and start with.
That's a great tip, by the way. And so Wednesday, we covered 9 ways to get listings in today's market. Today, we're going to be talking about this negotiation, if you will, how to get contracts accepted, but it starts long before you write the offer. Correct. It starts before you put the buyer in the car. It starts with the buyer consultation that you and I have been talking about till I feel like we're blue in the face going back several months, because it's just so important to set the expectation. And like I've said before, like you've said before, the friction that exists, whether it's in real estate or whether it's in life, is when expectations are misaligned. I expect something, you expect something different, and that's where the friction comes in. So this buyer consult really is reducing friction, educating the buyer. So let's start with, or where do you want to start when it comes to winning offers? Because I know it's going to be at the beginning.
Yes. So I actually have been working on an outline while I was backstage, because I had so many thoughts You and I have addressed this a lot, but I really, really want to emphasize this. The truth is, the best thing that you can do is to educate your client before anything begins. You have no control over the market. You cannot change the number of homes available. You cannot change the mind of the seller. Those are the things you cannot control. You can be persuasive, you can be a better communicator, and we'll talk about those things. But the first most important thing is that you educate your very own client. So when you have a buyer prospect, and I love it that you guys talked about being pre-qualified, the first thing you do is you have an interview with the buyer. You talk to them about their motivation. You talk to them about why now is a great time to buy for them, or an important time to buy.
Sure.
Really need to get in the mind of them, and then you need to understand both their emotional and financial pre-qualification, right? Somebody says, oh, we're just curious. We like ideas, or we're wondering if it's a good time. We're just curious. We're just looking. That's not the best person to be showing during COVID.
Right.
So first things first is, and you need to follow a detailed process, right? And it starts with the interview, the initial questionnaire, which we have available for you on the allegianceway.com.
Right.
Funny, I feel like that sounds like a sales pitch, Charlie, but it isn't. It's just convenience, because people would be blowing up the chat saying, wait, can I have a copy? So that's the reason we did that for all of you, is to make this simpler. So start with a detailed questionnaire, and don't forget to ask the obvious things or the important things. Then you do an actual buyer presentation. And the number of agents who have said to me, I don't have time for that, is ridiculous, right? Now, recently, gosh, it's this week, I had an agent tell me that their buyers are sucking the life out of him. And I said, interesting, tell me more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He said, well, I'm just showing this one buyer in particular. It's a hard to find property. I've written 7 offers. I had them all rejected. I said, how many of those 7 offers were basically that the buyer was unrealistic about the terms that they offered? You knew it should be different, but you couldn't persuade your client.
Right.
Realistic. He said half, half-ish of the 7.
Yeah.
He knew better. The buyer just wasn't being realistic.
Right.
But it takes time. The buyer has to get beaten up by the market.
They have to learn their lesson.
Right. Here's the problem. That's so unfair.
Right.
It's like saying my kid just has to get hit by a car a couple times before they learn to not run in the street. That's so not fair as a parent.
Yep.
Now, every once in a while, we have a stubborn, unrealistic client.
Sure.
It happens.
Right.
But I don't want that to be your go-to. You need to take responsibility for your communication. And Charlie, what you said about conflict arises when expectations differ. I always wish we could do a show of hands, like for all the agents listening. How many of you have ever felt when it came to the offer time or the negotiating time that you were negotiating more with your own client than the other side?
Oh, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
You find that the negotiation is with your client.
Mm-hmm.
That means you did not get on the same page in the beginning. Now, don't go telling me about that one time you had this super stubborn, crazy. We all have.
Right.
Okay. I'm not talking about the outlier. I'm talking about the rule.
Yep.
And the rule, that expression, buyers are liars, is absolute nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. They told you what they understood, and you heard it the way you heard it. And it's your fault if you didn't clarify. So have an initial interview, do a detailed buyer process, and we have trainings on those. We have resources for you. We've covered this in other shows. But in the buyer process, you have to do a statistical overview. You have to show them the pace of the market. You have to show them what their options are before you get in the car. Don't just start randomly showing properties that they pulled up themselves on Redfin or Zillow. And then when they make unrealistic choices, you sort of talk down to them and say, well, that's not going to work. You better offer more than that. And now they think you're just not on their side.
Right.
So what I do is I show them the list to sell ratio right now.
Yep.
Okay? The home that you want, there are 3 of them available. Average days on market is 5. And the list to sell ratio is 101.34% of asking, meaning over full price.
Yep.
And I say that before they get excited and fall in love with the kitchen. And I say, how do you feel about that? And then I shut up. This is when we have the negotiating strategy conversation. So I talked to them about this. Here's the other thing. Agents have pushed back on me and said, I don't have time for a buyer presentation, or I asked if they wanted my help, if they wanted me to explain the process. Yep. And they said, that's not necessary. We've bought a house before.
Now, wait.
That's not how I do it.
So what about the agent that says, I do it as we go?
What does that mean?
We're in the car, I'm chatting them up, right? I'm going over the presentation that I have in my head somehow, right?
Okay.
And that we're covering it throughout the process. The problem, I think, with that is, what if they fall in love with the very first house that they see and they want to write an offer on it? You've not had a chance to cover 10% yet, right?
Right. So let's back up. Are we talking about it's a competitive market? There are 8 people calling them back. It's a cold lead. I had to be on my toes. I get it.
Yeah.
I did a buyer presentation over the kitchen counter of a vacant property once. So yes.
Right.
Do you absolutely seize the moment and do the best that you can to convert those leads before someone else does? Yes. But I will tell you,
I think this example is, it's a referral from Sphere, and they just don't want to sit down and take the time to do a buyer presentation because they think they can cover it. This is not a Zillow lead where you do LP Mama, you get out there, you show the house, right? No. This is just the agent that thinks, honestly believes that they are serving their clients at a super high level by doing this presentation, because it's not a presentation, right? This buyer presentation over this length of time. And I don't know how you do that when you're riding around in a car and you're just doing it from memory of things. How do you keep track of what you covered and what you haven't and with who?
Well, I think we need to step back a little bit, get a little bit of distance from this, because I think, we're kind of debating something a little bit more granular. The truth of the matter is, I think most agents are overlooking how big a deal it is that you buy a house and how long it took the agent to learn how to do this.
Right.
I remember the first contract I ever presented. It was terrifying and it was terrible. Okay. And I had been through real estate school and I had practiced before, but not on a real person.
Right.
So how many weeks, days, weeks, or years did it take you to become competent contract details? How long did it take you to become cognizant of the effect that the market has on your ability to purchase? I'll bet years. I'll bet you were a newbie out there running around happily writing contracts and cashing checks, and you still weren't a stats person. I'm not a stats person. I've said that. So here's what we need to recognize. Your client is the adult. It's their money and they have to make informed decisions. They're not just along for the ride, right? So if you don't educate them, then they're not empowered to make wise decisions. And when things get ugly, they're going to say, Amy, what should I do? Help. And I'm like, I can't choose for them, right? My favorite line is, we've talked about this. We talked about what would happen when this arose. How do you feel and what do you want to do? And then I get to shut up because they know they're just a little concerned. But I'm referring them back to, we've covered this, right? So now they're like, okay, good point. Yes. Now the best, most concrete example is right now when you're competing like crazy, right? You see a house, you love it, you're a little bit panicked. Like those of us who do work with buyers, it is a little sad to see them under so much pressure. I would love to have a little bit more breathing room to make a choice. They're freaking out. You're freaking out. Are we going to win? What should we offer? Amy, what's it worth? Well, who knows, right? Prices rise because of supply and demand, right? So home prices keep going up because there's more demand for homes than there are homes to buy. So it's like, fine, I'll offer more, fine, I'll offer more. So we just have to say to them, well, no one knows exactly where this home will ultimately be valued. It's going to be valued based on the demand for the home. We're competing against multiple offers. You have to offer what you're comfortable with. But think about everything else we've seen. And how will you feel if you miss it by $3,000, $5,000, and you're back in the car looking again, and the market is steadily marching up, right? So I show them with numbers. So this is the other thing, to your point, Charlie, about just stick them in the car and mention a few things here and there. Most of us are very visually driven. We're visual learners. And I've had agents say this all the time. I told them it was competitive. That's nothing. Right? When you show them, there are 3 homes currently that meet your criteria. There are 45 under contract in the last 15 days. The list to sell ratio at the time of contract is more than 100% of asking. How do you feel about that? Now they know. I see the house I love. I don't get to wait 4 days to make a decision. and I don't get to come in 10,000 low and see how it goes.
Yep.
Right. So that's what I would say to your, should I just drive them around and mention a few things? I would create a standard process, and we have that to share with you on the allegianceway.com, and practice it.
Well, yeah, and it also sets your level of service, right? And it eliminates as much of the misaligned expectations as possible, and then it's going to lead to raving fans, hopefully, and referrals from those people. And I think winging it, not having a process or a procedure that we do for everyone, likely leads to less referrals. People might be satisfied, but they're probably not raving fans, and there is a big difference, right? We all have the past clients that refer us all the time, and then we all have ones that it was a perfectly fine transaction, but then we've never gotten a referral from them ever.
Yes.
Right. And I think we just somehow assume that, oh, I guess they don't know anybody buying a house. No, not really. They forgot about you, right? Because your service wasn't amazing. And frankly, because you probably haven't followed up. But that's a discussion for another show.
Well, not necessarily, right? This is the reason to follow a detailed buyer process every single time. You will make the process shorter. You will not be complaining to us that your life is being sucked up by unrealistic buyers. You will have less stress, they will have less stress, and you will encourage enthusiastic referrals. Oh my goodness. What 3 better reasons to commit to becoming skilled at this?
Right. Okay, so we've got the questionnaire, we've got doing the buyer consultation, going over the stats, what are the days on market, can I sleep on it? You can, but you got one night, right? You're not sleeping on it for a week, right? Sure. What's that list price to sales price ratio? What contingencies, if any, can you expect to have? So can you have a home inspection, or does it need to be for informational purposes only? Or in some cases, you got to have the home inspection before you write the offer, right? Which is painful for some people, right? But there are home inspectors out there that are doing the kind of these quick and dirty systems inspections.
Yeah.
They're in and out in 30 minutes. It's not super detailed. So you know that you're not writing an offer on a house that has a foundation that's crumbling, right? Because in a lot of markets, you're not going to get a home inspection contingency.
Interesting. Okay, good point.
And you're not even going to get it for informational purposes only should you win the house. There is no home inspection. If you want an inspection, you're doing it before the offers are due, which is a little nutty, right? You can have dueling home inspections going on at the same time while the house is still active because no one's written their offer yet.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening in a fair number of markets. So we've discussed all of that with the buyer. They're prepped for this could come up. So they're thinking about it and they're not surprised. Wait a minute. You mean I have to pay $500 for an inspection before I even write an offer? I mean, I didn't even get the house.
Right.
And then they're stressed. But if you talked about that 3 weeks earlier during a presentation, then like to your point a minute ago, at least it's, remember we talked about this. We were hoping that this wouldn't be the scenario that came up. But unfortunately, it looks like it is, right? Because the listing agent said that they're expecting like 10 offers. And if we want an inspection, grab your ladder. We're going in there tomorrow, even though offers aren't due until Tuesday, right? What's next? So we've prepped them. Now it's time to write the offer. I think to your point, you said, at what price will you be disappointed if you don't get it? If you were to lose it by $1,000, is that going to keep you up at night for the next 10 years? In my experience, I've never once had a client, and I remember like before the financial, the Great Recession, like literally writing offers on the hood of your car, right? It's like, we got to do this now. You got to sign it. There was no electronic signatures. You could fax back and forth, right? But that wasn't great because then you couldn't read it, right? When it got, so there was no time to sleep on it. Prepping people for that. And so where are we in the process now? It's time to write the offer. How much do you want to go over? What's the escalation clause? You've gone over escalation clauses if this is something in your market already with the buyer, right? You've had the discussion around an appraisal, and can you waive the appraisal? Can you make up the difference between the appraised value and the contract price? All this is like so you've discussed it, right, Amy? This is, you and I discussed it a month ago, but now it's like, I found the house of my dreams. It's time to write.
Right.
how does that look? How do you bring up the terms, right? We talked about this stuff. Now it's time to make some decisions.
Right. I think you're making a really good point that I want to clarify. And it's something that I said earlier, and that is, how long did it take you to learn your job?
Yep.
You did a buyer presentation. You told them about this stuff once.
Right.
So please tell them over and over and over. The person who says, I bring it up in the car, please do.
After the buyer presentation. Right.
So I would say, go through a detailed presentation, give them a copy of the home buying guide.
Yep.
There's 2 touches. Talk about it as it comes up during showings, right? And
Sure.
then bring it up again at the time of offer. You really have to be detailed, Charlie. I appreciate you bringing up all these things. And different markets are different.
Yep.
I am grateful to say we are not waiving appraisal contingency in our market. It would be next to impossible when you have 30 showings in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
It will be under contract in 48 hours. People are on the lawn and they get 15 minutes in the house.
Yep.
Nobody gets an inspection like that.
Yep.
During that period.
Right.
So, you may say, we will not ask for anything other than health and safety or whatever as a clause. But anyway, I'm grateful to say none of my clients are buying homes without inspection. That just sounds terrifying.
Yeah.
But there are other really brave terms you can offer. And this is what you need to talk to your client about: is price is not the only factor, right? Price is not the only thing that matters. The terms of those other contingencies do matter. Can you cover the appraisal gap, right? That could have tremendous value. Can you offer a lease back? When I helped my daughter buy her house, I've shared this story because there were so many details. I offered a full month lease back on us.
Right.
That for a month on us.
Yep.
But we didn't not inspect the property. We were out there many times making sure we knew what we were getting, but we were generous in our terms.
Yep.
So then I think we talked to them about that. And Charlie, what you said about, will you be upset if you lose it by 1,000? The problem is, in most cases, they won't know. They won't know by how much they won or lost.
Yep.
So here's what I say to them. You need to make the offer that you will not regret having been too high or too low. Because what will happen is, what if they win? And then they say, well, that was too easy.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, right.
We went 10 over, we went 20 over. Do you think we paid too much?
Right.
So I tell them in advance, make the offer that you will not look over your shoulder and say, well, maybe we swung too hard. And I am that person. I like sharing the story of helping my daughter buy a home, because basically I was buying a home. She's young. I put to the down payment. I had those same regrets. Like, did I?
Right.
I knew, though, I didn't want to lose.
Yep.
And I went high and I went strong and I won. And I have no idea if I burned through $8,000 that I didn't need to, because it was higher than the higher that I needed to go. Yeah. Every time I visit that home, I know I made the right decision. This market has been accelerating. There were not a lot of great choices. It was a great home. I did everything necessary to win. And I, over time, second guess my decision less. I'm sharing that because your clients are going to second guess themselves, right? So
and like if you can get away with an escalation clause, then that limits that a little bit, right? You're competing with somebody, but a lot of markets, it is best and final offer, and it's just like a shot in the dark.
It is what it is.
And there's nothing you can do about that if that's how the listing agent and seller wish to review those offers. It's painful, but it's true.
Okay, so I have one more tip, because I see we're very short on time.
Sure.
We're still talking about value, and we're talking about price, and we're talking about regret.
Yep.
So I had a relatively new agent say to me, and she's not skilled and she doesn't know what to say, but it was still a pretty challenging question. She said she's having buyers ask her, is it a good time to buy? What if it's the top of the market? What if I can't sell it in a year? Well, here's the thing. None of us have a crystal ball.
Right.
First of all, so don't pretend you know that the market is going up or down or sideways. You don't know. Okay. So the thing that I always ask, and this is authentic, I truly am a consultant, and I'm there to help people buy or sell when it's the right time for them, not when it's the right time for me. So I say, interesting, are you planning to sell in a year? Right? And if they say yes, I'll say, please don't buy one.
Right.
Seriously. Like, we have a ton of military turnover in my market.
Yeah.
Somebody says, I'm going to be stationed here for 2 years, and I'm moving, I'll say, don't buy.
Right.
I don't know where the market is going.
Yep.
Now, some other agent will laugh at me and say, Amy, you're an idiot. I had a client who made $50,000 in the last 2 years. Okay. Is this Vegas? Like,
right. Yeah. Right.
can't promise
Yes.
that
Correct.
happens every 24 months. So unless they plan to live in their home for a while, I will say, okay, well then I think you should reconsider. Honestly, I honestly would say that. It's not about me. But if you're planning to be in the market for a long time, and my daughter was, she bought a starter home at a premium price in a very hot market.
Yep.
And she's not going anywhere. 10 years from now, she'll feel
Right.
like
She'll be good. Right.
she bought at 26 instead of 36,
Right.
and she will feel happy.
Yep.
So I want you guys to be better consultants and make sure you're giving your clients good advice about the long term.
That's awesome. We're going to leave it there. We're short on time. Eyerusalem, back over to you.
Thank you for joining us today. And as always, we are here to make your career better. Have a great weekend.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you Monday back here at